Hi there. In this lecture we're going to have a look at a very interesting game played in 1957. Garais, playing against Bobby Fischer in the 58th US Open round 7, kicked off with e4. Bobby Fischer played the Sicilian defence. We see knight f3, d6, d4, c takes d4, knight takes d4, knight f6, knight c3, a6. And now g3. This has actually got some popularity in more recent years relative to this recording. So it's very, very interesting what black should do here. Fischer played e5. He didn't mind weakening d5 here. It's a very interesting decision. Knight goes back, bishop e7, bishop g2. Both sides castle, knight bd7, h3, and now b5. So black's plan is pretty clear. Black can actually exert quite a bit of influence potentially on e4 and moves like rook c8, b4. And one of the plans black would like, perhaps, is to make sure that there's a pawn there and not a piece, to make this kind of outpost square less effective, the Boleslavsky hole, as it's sometimes called. So bishop e3, bishop b7, and now here it's a very interesting decision, f4. This is a bit of a risk, actually, f4. Much less risky is g4. For example, knight c5, knight g3, g6, queen d2. This situation is more stable for black. It's actually more stable. It's about equal. But f4 incurs some risk. We see queen c7, and now this makes things very bad, actually, g4. You might be surprised how bad it actually makes the position. f5 instead is also not in white's favour already, because black can clamp down on the dark squares here, and the persistent semi-open c-file pressure is actually a real nuisance, combined with d5 here, for example, like this, and not even taking on c2, just knight b6. And if black gets that dark square bishop, black's actually doing really, really well here. This is a very strong position for black with this bishop here. So it's interesting that g4 actually, though, makes things really bad. We see b4. First, the outpost is replaced with a pawn, that outpost square. And now after e takes f4, rook takes, we see bishop g5. The dark square bishops come off. And you can see that the d5 pawn is actually rather vulnerable, especially because also this weakened diagonal. Black can have sometimes queen c5 with great effect. So a couple of rooks come off. And now this check, and all of a sudden, after queen f2, white is in a world of pain here. White actually resigned, feeling the hopelessness of the position. This is a shocking, dramatic finish. If rook e1 was played, for example, white is kind of paralysed, knight f6, and black is going to take out the d5 pawn. For example, b3, bishop takes d5, the queen is overloaded. If bishop takes, knight takes, the queen can't take, so queen takes e1. And here, if h4 as an example, rook e3, white's going to get mated in short order. So it's a very, very interesting, instructive game, more so because this variation has risen again in some usage in modern grandmaster games, the variation with g3. So it's a very instructive game, given that the possibility of this coming up is a little bit higher. Yeah, this g3 line. And this is a very, very instructive model game, how Fischer played. So yeah, very, very interesting play there from black. So philosophically, we can say perhaps that you've got to be careful with the logical looking f4. It does weaken that diagonal of def. That's one key point. You can lead to a situation with a very weak pawn on d5, as we saw here. This pawn got very weak on d5 later. So yeah, very, very interesting scenario. This pawn was weak. The diagonal weakened. The dark square bishops traded off to weaken the diagonal of def even further. And this, pouncing into f2, deadly, causing white to resign. So a very, very interesting, sweet little game there. Hope you enjoyed it and got something from it. Thanks so much. Hi guys, I hope you really enjoyed this video. If you want more Bobby Fischer content, check out my Kingscrusher TV page. And if you go to the bottom of it, it starts at the bottom with 1970 to 1992. I also have two other Bobby Fischer courses. I found him absolutely fascinating to study. So there's 1956 to 62 early in his career, and there's 1963 to 68. So I hope you find those interesting. You might want to check them out, all the free samples. And I hope you really enjoyed this video. Comments, questions, likes, shares, always appreciated. Thanks very much.